Welcome to the Edinburgh Fringe. Sometimes it's a matter of pronunciation. Yes, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. This is Edinburgh calling. For 12 months of the year, the capital of Scotland. For 1 month of the year, the capital of the arts world. And up. Bring it down. There's an up and a down there in the theme tune. Yes, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. As always, Ewan Spence here on the Edinburgh Fringe podcast. And yes, more shows every single year, more choice. And I always say, take a chance on the Fringe, even though one of the issues of the Fringe makes it kind of hard to take a chance, because one of the things with the continually rising costs we get is also the rise of the cost to the public. And I think everybody has to remind this mind when they talk about going for a night out at the Fringe. When you got a show at £15 a ticket for a couple to go, there's £30, throw in a meal, £15 to £30, depending on where you go, whether you're just going for a quick sit down somewhere or a larger, more substantive meal, 2 drinks, there's another £15. So just going out for the night and seeing a single show at the Fringe is going to be between £60 and £70. Put in 3 shows, you know, like the wheel of shows, I say, one you like, one someone recommends, and one at random to take a chance. Well, you're well over £100 for a couple to do that, and that is a lot of risk to take. I do feel that that risk is almost always its own artistic reward, and Kinder is a great example. There are hints on what to expect when you look at the small bullet points. A story of a drag queen preparing a comedy roast, but finding out with an hour to go it's actually a booking for a children's story hour. And yes, that hour of having to rejig everything is performed in real time. In that short liminal space, there is some theatrical magic that lifts the story to something wonderful, powerful, reflective, and vitally important. It is the Fringe at its best, I would say. I caught up with the team behind the show, producer and performer Ryan Stewart and director Tiah Bullock, to find out more. Joining me now on the show, Ryan Stewart and Tiah Bullock. Welcome. And the show, Kinder, we'll come back to that. What a fantastic show, Ryan.
Thank you, Ewan, and thank you so much for having us today. We're so excited to be here.
Obviously, there is a lot to unpack about the show. It's one of those delightful moments at the Fringe where theatre and art and politics and current affairs and everything smashes together. But you must have a one-liner for this show, the elevator pitch. What is it?
Oh, elevator pitch for the show. I would say a drag queen, a library, and a gross misinterpretation of a reading hour.
Yeah, that's perfect.
and the disaster that comes from that thing.
Yeah.
It's such it's an almost traditional structure for a 1 hour monologue show.
Yeah. I think something that is incredibly integral to the structure of the show and the dramaturgy of the show is this idea of stories. And so for me, for both of us in crafting the show, we kind of wanted to take that traditional 3-act model, that beginning, middle, end, you know, if it's not broke, don't fix it. The idea of that and kind of, but give it our like drag theatrical spin. So, I mean, the show is kind of demarcated by these 3 specific performances that the artist does during the overall show. And that kind of provided the structure for us to then build everything else around it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
The show itself, there's a fair few twists and turns in here. Like, where did all of this, how do you come about And how do you come up with a show like this that has so many disparate elements, that draws on those sort of three topics of like politics, library, and there's a bit of language in there as well? Where was the starting point, and how do you go about getting an hour out of all of that?
Absolutely. I think the starting point for everything was this idea of language
Mm.
and how we use language and how we use words and sort of how language is co-opted by certain communities, what certain words mean, and the lineage of those words as well. The seed of the show really started with this idea of quote unquote reading and this idea of what a reading hour is. And for the queer community, this, popularization of the idea of reading or you know, roasting one another, sort of these sly but clever digs, is so embedded within drag culture.
Mm.
But then you have this other complete opposite end of drag performance that has become popularized lately of this idea of reading hours in libraries. And so the first sort of idea came to me and that I sort of spoke to Tia about in bringing her on board was what would happen if a drag artist misinterpreted what a reading hour was,
Mm.
especially in the climate that we're currently in and the sort of, moral panic that we're seeing emerge out of having drag performers partake in this tradition of reading hours, and this idea of exposing children, or quote unquote, exposing children to queerness and stuff like that. And so I think language and words and etymology was that sort of foundation and how different communities use that to build identity or to also tear it down.
Yeah. I think as well, it really informed from a direction point of view and then also a structure point of view, this balance between like light and shade or irony and sincerity, because it's like on one hand it's quite funny that this drag artist has misinterpreted this, but that can then also open up a whole world of sociopolitical commentary as well. So it was this very informative thing of like when can we shoot up and when do we come down, and that tension was the most interesting thing, and guiding light for us.
And it's a very simple illustrative point, but you can't put pronunciation of your show title on the poster, can you?
I can't, no. And I think that's a very purposeful
Yeah.
part of the show. And I mean, again, as you mentioned before, not too many spoilers, but we do have a little bit of a linguistics lesson at some point in there. And I think, officially the show is called Kinder. But I remember when we first did the show in Melbourne, we kind of did a test season just to see if it had any legs, for our Fringe festival that we have in Melbourne. And we would have front of house staff come up to us before the show and say, how do we pronounce the show? Is it Kinder? Is it Kinder? And I'm like, I was basically just like, you say whatever you want.
Yeah.
There's no other show going on at the moment that has those 6 letters in that order.
Yeah.
So however you pronounce it, people will come to the line and they will join the line, and they will come and see the show. But yeah, I think that's a purposeful, like the title is a purposeful illustration of how language is played with in the show.
Yeah, totally.
Because we want to keep people in that space of, oh, I don't know what this word is meaning or for me, or what does this word mean for me? How would I pronounce this word? How does another person pronounce this word? And just kind of that initial destabilization that the drag artist Goody has at that sort of initial breaking moment at the top of the show.
How did you feel when you decided, when that idea for the title crystallized?
That is a great question. In Australia, our preschool stage is often referred to as kindergarten, or
Kindy.
fondly kinder or kindy. And my family is also, I have German heritage. So obviously kindergarten comes from the word children's garden, basically, and sort of the first preschools that were being established, I think around in the 1800s, in Germany, this idea of how do we start to educate or provide young children with a sort of enrichment before they go into formal education? And so kinder for me has always been a word that has been both rooted in the Australian culture that I grew up in. I went to kinder, I went to kindy. But also there was that other cultural element to it, the German etymology of it and that kind of stuff that sort of also led me to wanting to name it that way. And I do love a one-word title. I love something snappy that people can just, throw out easily. And so I think when I was like, Kinder, I was like, perfect.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Again, not to give too much away, I just want to pick out one point because it's the point where my ears went from already having been pricked up watching the show to suddenly going full on, right, okay, I am 110% engaged with this now. Where are you going? And that is bringing in the life, a small part of the life of Magnus Hirschfeld. And I know some of that history, and the queer community will know some of that history, but it's probably not that widely known.
No, it probably was only made known to me, and I'm in the twilight years of my 20s. And I didn't really know this history, and I've been a out and proud queer person for half of my life now. I didn't really know this history until I started reading some books recently and sort of in the lead up to writing the show, and suddenly this name of this person and this institute that he founded and this remarkable groundbreaking research that he was doing during the sort of Weimar Republic era of Germany, right before the Second World War, was all suddenly made known to me. And I think the real mourning of learning that history and the flip side of that is that we do only know a small part of it because it was destroyed. It was literally destroyed, and so it's a fragmented history that we get told. And
I mean, just to set the tone for our listeners, he did a huge amount of research on LGBTQI issues in late 20s, early 30s Berlin. The Institute of Sexual Sciences, it's, what is left is still landmark stuff. But those stories are all gone now. And it's a story that's really still not common knowledge.
no, it's not common knowledge at all. And I think one thing that was really interesting for us, we did a season of the show at Adelaide Fringe earlier this year. And as we went into redevelopment rehearsals just before that, the first day that we walked into the rehearsal room, I think I was just scrolling on my phone looking at the news. And it was the news coming out of America that the Department of Health had basically wiped any semblance of mentions of queerness and queer identity and all that sort of stuff from the archives that are on the internet. And it just hit us so hard that something that we are talking about in the show that happened 100 years ago was happening again.
Yeah. It was uncanny.
It was uncanny. And if we don't know about that history of what has happened to the history of what has happened to our own history, it's going to happen again. And if, there are incredible activists out there at the moment who are working hard to archive that work and make sure that the same destruction that happened to archives previously is, avoided as best as possible under current administrations. But it was scary, and it just sort of, it showed how pertinent what we were talking about was to the current state of the world.
Totally. And I think like it was we'd talked about as well, it's a bit scarier now as well because it exists in a digital space. And I think now sort of generationally, we're a bit more desensitized to the sort of things that are happening around the world now because they all exist in this sort of ether realm. Whereas, back then, because of the tangibility of like physically, burning books and things like that, I don't know, it perhaps carries a different kind of weight now, but once it's gone online, it's gone. And so yeah, as Ryan just mentioned, like the work of queer people now who are trying to desperately archive as much as they can is so more important now than ever.
How did it feel encountering that and realizing its implications for the first time?
Yeah, well, it wasn't until Ryan wrote the show that I heard about it. And it was through like the Olivia Lang.
Yeah, there's an
wasn't it?
incredible book written by a wonderful author who I love called Olivia Lang. They wrote a book recently called Everybody, and Lang's work kind of ties in art theory, sociology, all this kind of stuff. And that was sort of where I first encountered Hirschfeld and the his Zwischenstufenlehre, his this theory about the steps in between that we talk about in the show. Um, and yeah, again, it wasn't a queer archive or anything like this where I was able to access that knowledge. It was the individual research of a queer author who was writing about bodies and how bodies are shaped and melded, and queerness can either be imposed or removed
Yeah,
from that by the quote unquote powers that be. That yeah, we were able to encounter that work.
totally. Yeah, I think for me, like um when you ask about like the implications of it, I was part of this from very early stages when Rye was sort of still piecing together things from like their notes app. And, and they'd constantly come to me with things and then I'd send them away and go, write it again and again. And then there was like this final moment where they had sort of when I was sort of looking at individual pieces, there were moments where it'd be like a story about from their childhood, and then randomly it'd be like yeah about like Hirschfeld and moments like that. And then they found a moment where they were able to sort of just like amalgamate it into just such a cohesive way that I went, oh, there it is. And I think when you talk about like the implications of it for me, it informed this kind of guiding light for us in the rehearsal process, which was this idea of the balance between personal memory and collective memory and the through lines between those two things.
Does it feel like you've got a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, Tia, to direct not just Ryan's vision, but to deliver a piece that could echo long beyond the hour?
Yes and no. I think I am someone who always says, take the work seriously, never take yourself seriously. So I think I'm always working in service of the work as it stands in front of me. And the really beautiful thing about this process is that Ryan and I have been close friends now for a number of years. So um, it was more about lifting them as opposed to like lifting them and their work more than anything. So responsibility, I don't know. I don't think so. I think we talk a lot about this idea that it's our baby. So it's just like making sure the baby's okay kind of thing. And then however people sort of take it, it's up to them. I can't really be, I can't control that, I guess.
What sort of reaction are you getting? Because much of the depth, the intricacy, and the politics don't become clear until you're into the show. So what is it like watching the audience realizing what sort of show they're in?
It's been an incredibly interesting experience of first how the show is marketed, I guess, um, the positioning of the audience, and then how the audience react. And I would say um, drag here, given its like the rise in its commercial success recently, is the first initial draw.
Mm,
Obviously, the show sits within, you're flicking through the Fringe guide, it's sitting there firmly within the theatre category.
mm.
Um, and reviews and that sort of stuff and listings have always included it in theatre, so people are coming in with the expectation that there is some form of amalgamation between drag and theatre. But I think given the rise in the commercial success of drag recently, drag is a big draw for that.
Yeah.
And we obviously start the show with a bit of a bang, a bit of a spectacle. And that is our sort of big bait and switch moment.
Yeah, totally.
One thing that I think I was going into writing this show for was, this is a show for my community. This is a show for people like me. This is the first work I've ever created, the first work that Tia's ever directed. And so when I was creating it for that initial Melbourne season, I was creating this for people I love, my friends, my family, my community. And I wasn't sure where the life was going to be after that, whether it had a life at all. We just wanted to put something up and see how it would fly. And I think an incredible thing that was sort of parroted back to me in our Adelaide Fringe season by a wonderful producer who's based here in the UK, who has been a big proponent of the work, was he came up to me post show and he was like, "You're creating a work that is incredibly accessible to people who aren't a part of this community or who aren't familiar with like I was saying before, the use of language in this community or the problems that are faced by them and stuff like that." And that was the point where I was like, oh wow, yeah, okay, I didn't realize that. And our audiences in Edinburgh have also reflected that. I come out from behind the curtain each performance and I look out and I'm like, wow, there is a room full of people who I did not think would look at this show and be like, I'm going to come and see that. And that, firstly, it probably speaks to the to that accessibility of the work. But yeah, it also speaks to, I think, audiences' willingness to take a chance on something that they might not be familiar with. And I don't. I end the show by saying this isn't for everyone. You might not have liked the work, and that's absolutely fine. Not everything is for everyone. But I thank each and every person who does take a chance on it, because whether or not they liked it, most of the time, 99% of the time, they all sit through it.
Yes.
We have had a few walkouts. They sit through it, and just by osmosis, hopefully they're taking in something or taking in a story from someone who they probably haven't heard the life experience of before.
Yeah, it's been pretty like staggering for us because like we've come from the context of Melbourne and Adelaide Fringe, and I'm originally from Adelaide in Australia. I don't know if anyone will know what that is.
That's that little island just to the west of New Zealand, yeah?
Yeah.
And then Adelaide's that little country town.
Yeah.
No. Love
Dude.
Adelaide.
Oh, the emails I'm going to get.
But no, like we have come from two places in which we have support networks, right? And so we're just constantly floored every night when there are people in there. We're like, oh, you don't know us, but you're here. That's so special. So we're certainly not taking that for granted. We're very grateful for that there are people coming.
Yeah.
Which is not at all to say that like, oh, it's I don't know about this work. It's just to say like that's you are just taking a chance on something you don't know, and that's really cool.
How has it changed you two, the show?
A lot.
Yeah, it has changed us a lot. Tia and I met previously doing another work that we are presenting here in Edinburgh Fringe, in the sort of quote unquote backstage vibes. I'm producing the show and Tia is the production and stage manager of that one. So we initially met, those are still incredibly creative roles within a production team. But the sort of place that we initially met together was that more logistical kind of operational way of running a show. And through that, we built our friendship. We realized that our brains operate in a very similar way. We often joke about the single brain cell that bounces between both of our skulls. And, before I'm going out to do a show, Tia will often be like, all right, I'm giving you the brain cell for an hour now. You can go out there and use it. And then after the show, I'm like, and here you go, the brain cell back. But I think the process of going very deeply creatively into a project and a story has deepened that relationship even more. It has, individually, it has shown to us that we can do the roles that we are undertaking in this project. As I mentioned before, this is the first time I've ever written something and performed it as well. And this is the first time that Tiah has ever directed something. So the success of the work, I guess, has really demonstrated to us that, we have a right to call ourselves by the things that we're calling ourselves for this show.
Yeah. I think in the process as well, like, again, like going into it as new creatives, we've each like poked at these little insecurities within us, but in a safe way, in a way that's, if like if we go like, if you're like, I didn't understand that note, and it'll be like, oh, am I not delivering the note correctly? And then we'll talk about that and then go, oh, okay. And then we kind of work together to each build ourselves up in our roles, to remind each other, no, this is a good piece of work that you've written, or no, that was a good note that you gave me. Yes, like let's try that. So
I think it's been a creative relationship of kindness.
Yeah.
to bring it back to the work. No, but truly, like Tiah said, when I don't understand something, or when she doesn't understand something, we have that safety net of being like, what do you mean by that? And to not then have to go out of the rehearsal room and feel like that was a personal jab, but rather a creative challenge, I guess.
Yeah, and I think like really early on, something that I think found was useful for both of us was that we did this development at the beginning of this year, and I kind of created this ritual for us where it was about separating like the rehearsal room from the outside world, and it was this process of like, we would say these 5 things to each other of like, I will not confuse the rehearsal for the performance, and I will commit myself completely to the play of the work and all this sort of stuff, and creating these like separations of like when we are in the room together as creatives versus when we are out of the room as friends, just really helped us commit to the work and work in service of the work.
As I said there, the work in the hour is wonderful, but outside of the hour has its own power as well. So for a first-time piece coming up to the Edinburgh Fringe, yes, I come back next year, tell me what you're bringing. But for now, where can people come and experience this?
You can come and find us at 6:40 p.m. at Underbelly Cowgate in the Big Belly space. I've been saying the show might be hard to swallow, but we'll help you digest. It's a big belly.
There might be the occasional drag-based pun going on as well in all of these politics. You said you were also doing something else at the Fringe?
Yes, so I'm also producing a work called Nusha, Niusia, Nusha, which is down at Summer Hall at 1:20 p.m. every day as well.
And where can people find out more about you online, outside of Edinburgh?
Yeah, so you can follow us on socials at Ary Presentation, ARY Presentation, all one word. You can follow along my drag account at Goody Prostate. We would love to connect with audiences on there. I've been building a beautiful audience online who've been coming to see the show and sharing about it and stuff like that. So any of those avenues on social media is wonderful. And if social media is not your thing, because it is a bit of a hellscape out there at the moment, come along and see us. We are always around Cowgate from around 3 p.m. every day, running around, flyering and running amok there. So you can connect with us in person there as well.
And we'll have all of those links, as always, back on our website, edinburghfringe.thepodcastcorner.com. Ryan, Tiah, thank you.
Thank you, Ewan. Thank you so much.
Tiah Bullock and Ryan Stewart there from Kinder. Plays the Underbelly Cowgate, 6:40 through 7:40 in the evening. As always, links to the box office back on our website, edinburghfringe.thepodcastcorner.com. edinburghfringe.com. ARY presentations are up on Instagram as well. It's the ARY presentation. We will have the link also as well. And so the usual social please comes in now. Link, like, love, share, subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast in an app, there may be space to leave a review or pop in your star rating, whatever you feel the show is worth. Put that in there. It helps other people find the show throughout the rest of August and beyond. For now, ta-ra. Been listening to the Edinburgh Fringe Show, hosted by Ewan Spence, produced by the Podcast Corner for Spence Media and Radio 6 International. Listen to more from the Fringe at edinburghfringe.thepodcastcorner.com.